Okay, we're good to go. Welcome back, everyone. We're on to the Bruce County Highways agenda, and we broke for lunch, and we're back. We're down to item 3, correspondence. Brian, the first piece of correspondence received is from the town of South Bruce Peninsula, re-sidewalks on Bruce Road 10.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've received a variety of calls and correspondence, spoke with the fire chief of South Bruce Peninsula concerning a Pine Tree Drive in Hepworth. Pine Tree Drive comes off of Bruce Road 10. Bruce Road 10 south towards Highway 21, Bruce Road 8 towards Sauble Beach, and naturally Highway 6 towards Wyerton. And the ratepayers on Pine Tree have children that cross the road into the school that's on the west side of the road. There had been concerns on how the children cross the school, and between South Bruce Peninsula and the county, we came up with a variety of options and assessed the options, which prompted a letter to South Bruce Peninsula with a recommendation that it would appear that the proper solution is to extend sidewalk east side to the intersection at Highway 6, where there's ped crossings right now. So in terms of timing, we had offered that I would come to this committee with a recommendation of the potential of doing the base work in 2017, and then allowing the county to do the more major work, which would be recycle and pave from Hepworth all the way to Highway 21 in 2018. So on that basis, Mr. Chairman, liaising between the three groups, ratepayers and local municipality and county, we came up with a recommendation that is before you.
The recommendation is that the correspondence referred, town of South Bruce Peninsula, west, wrong item, scroll down. What's the recommendation, Brian?
I believe it is that the department schedules spot improvements on County Road 10 in Hepworth in 2017 and schedules the rehabilitation of Bruce Road 10 between Highway 21 and Hepworth in 2018.
So that's correspondence. Do we need a mover and a seconder to accept that? Yeah, moved by Bob, seconded by Mitch. Any discussion on the motion? Go ahead, Janice.
Brian, thank you. So in your report, you talk about the minor improvements in 2017. That includes a base lift of hot mix in the urban area. So can you explain to me like what that would do as far as the children and assisting them for that year until 2018? Like how, just explain to me how that would work, because I get so many calls on this issue and I would like to be able to explain everything to them.
Excellent point. You're quite right, is I guess in the road world, the goal of 17 would be to do the storm drain, put curb and gutter in, have a paved boulevard, put sidewalk in, and I do recall the cost municipality and county, and I believe we've provided some costs to each partner, and then apply the base course of asphalt in the urban area. So everything that we would do would be capped with hot mix. We'd have the top hot mix 40 mil left off in between curb and gutter, and that would be placed in 2018 when we do the recycling and then paving work from the south limit of Hepworth to Highway 21.
Okay, so the sidewalk will be put in place in 2017. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Along with storm drain, curb and gutter. What else did I miss? There was something else.
Well, it would be general restoration. It would look much like Glamis does today, actually, in the sense that the only thing that we wouldn't have on there would be the top lift of hot mix.
Yeah. That's great.
And again, we're going to be cutting across the road for storm drainage and whatnot, and there could be some gentle settlements that we'd be well served by putting the top lift on the year after, which we normally do in an urban area.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for helping us with this.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Brian, we're on to item B, correspondence referred, Santec Consulting.
Mr. Chairman, you see the correspondence in your package. I do note that we went to a meeting in Kincardine in mid-October, and at the meeting there was some discussions that suggested the approach for EPCOR might be a little different than some of the notices had identified. Yet, regardless, we're very pleased to be working with a potential provider, and it was thought prudent that the county should collect their thoughts through one department, and the thought was that the department be the Highways Department and offer them to EPCOR to facilitate sort of moving forward.
So that's correspondence information. We need a motion on that? Moved by Ann, seconded by Mitch. Any discussion on the motion? Mike?
I just see that the environmental report will be, and study will be done in 2016, and I wonder if there's anything that the county can do or comments that would help move this along.
You're going to see a few changes yet, Mike. It's still, as Stantec and the consultants go through routing and all of that, there's still probably going to be some changes. So it's kind of a fluid process right now. But basically, I think having Brian as the go-to person here at the county is the best path forward for us. So it's going to be fluid for a little bit.
I just think if we get the opportunity to comment and that would help, in any way help the project,
Yes.
I think we should.
Anything else on that? All those in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. We're on to item C. Brian, correspondence referred. Town of South Bruce Peninsula West Road and South Bruce Peninsula attached.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we recall through another committee, there had been a decision on an official plan amendment that did not move forward with an amendment to the designation of the West Road. South Bruce Peninsula provided confirmation that they were not going to pursue an appeal of that amendment. And also attached was a request to consider jurisdictional change of the West Road within the boundaries of South Bruce Peninsula to the local municipality. And our response had been that a bit problematic in the sense of where we are with the West Road environmental assessment. And there's a variety of inputs that we require before I think we can provide a well-rounded response. There's official plan wording that would have some ramifications if there were a jurisdictional change. There's partners, other municipalities that may be affected if there's a jurisdictional change, and there's obligations through the OMB on how those would be resolved as well. So, and again, it's again challenging with not having the problem statement for the West Road, because a potential solution to this request may be adding it as a potential solution to the environmental assessment and allowing the assessment to complete itself to find out what the different solutions may be and how this may fit within a solution, yet still manage all the obligations under the official plan. So we suggest that we would do further research and come back at the December Highways Committee meeting.
That's what the recommendation is, that the correspondence referred, Town of South Bruce Peninsula West Road and South Bruce Peninsula be received for information, and that the staff will return with a fulsome report at the December committee meeting. Have a mover for the motion, moved by Ann, seconded by Mitch. Any discussion on the motion? Janice?
I have a bunch of questions, Brian, for you, but I'm going to wait until the next item on the environmental assessment.
Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Brian, we're on to information items. A, West Road Environmental Assessment.
Mr. Chairman, we always have a plan of how to approach the environmental assessment and the timing of meeting certain objectives. And I think using the phrase the warden used moments ago about being fluid and responsive and flexible is we continue working with our First Nations partners, and during the public information we received a variety of suggestions on how we could improve the problem statement. We've recrafted a revised problem statement and weren't able to place it before you at this time because it needed some other inputs. But I'm hopeful that's going to happen in December. And as I mentioned beforehand, we need a problem statement before we should ever consider potential options or solutions.
So the recommendation is that the report for the West Road Environmental Assessment is for information, and we'll hear more in December. I don't think we need a motion on that, but Janice, do you have some questions? Go ahead.
I do. Thank you, Chair. So, Brian, the environmental assessment itself, in the OMB ruling, it talked about not proceeding with an environmental assessment until you have had consultation with our Aboriginal neighbors. And it talked, I think it was on page 28 of that report, about how there should be a policy created initially by the warden and the rest of council on how to consult officially with the First Nations. And I'm just wondering if that's happened.
If I can offer, the OMB hearing had many pages.
I know.
Yes, and it had much discussion. But I would suggest that we focus on conclusions and wording that was included in our official plan, which was confirmed to be accurate. And we use that as the guideline of our objectives, not the discussion as the hearing officer went through a variety of inputs to come to a conclusion.
I guess my concern over that is number one, that appeared to be mandated by the chair of that hearing. And I'm concerned about bump ups going all the way down the road, because if we don't follow the recommendations or the decisions by that body, I think we're going to be in trouble. And I've always said all along too that, if our First Nations neighbors are not at all in favor of this project, I'm reluctant to even see you go a day further on this. So that's why my concern is with respect, well, many, is the consultation process and the fact that we were required to create a policy, or the warden was. Okay, so that's.
So have we
So I'm
answered
saying
that?
we don't
That is part of the discussion in the hearing officer's report. Very clearly, his decision is embodied in the official plan that reads, any proposed road improvements to the West Road, as designated Schedule B transportation, shall be subject to the requirements of an EA undertaken by the County of Bruce pursuant to the Environmental Assessment Act, including consultation. Mm-hmm. So with Saugeen Ojibwe Nation and presumably other Métis parties. So it's clear that we do consultation, and consultation in a very broad word, because we have spent a great deal of time with our First Nations partners.
On this project?
Yes, as recently as 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And they actually have in their hand a draft problem statement, as they're aware of what the draft problem statement is prior to our December meeting, when I hope to introduce it to committee. So yes, and if I can offer, the word consultation, one has to be very cautious, because there's different elements of engagement, pre-engagement, pre-consultation, and then consultation. And my opinion has been, and this is just opinion, that seeing a variety of information, the consultation occurs when there's something to test, when you can assess impacts. So far, we're trying to create a problem statement. So we don't have solutions, and we can't address impacts because we're not at that stage of the environmental assessment. So the county is moving ahead with a work with our First Nations partners. And it's under the framework of our county official plan, as opposed to the discussion in the hearing officer's report.
Okay. I'm just trying to express my concerns to you and to the rest of this council. Another question that I had, you do agree that you're going to do the EA on the entire length of the road, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, because I have heard you say that, but then in the public meeting in Lions Head, you stated that doing the entire road was undesirable. Those were your word. That was your word. So I just want a clarification on that.
If I can offer, I probably said it was formidable.
Formidable.
Not undesirable.
Oh, well,
Formidable.
you actually used the word undesirable, but maybe you misspoke, Mr. Knox.
Well, there's always that potential.
There is always.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, sir.
But it is our intention, in every document that's been released, and every intention
Okay.
of this department is to do 29 kilometers of road in accordance
Okay.
with our official plan, in accordance, which is the decision of the hearing officer.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And right now, as we're still working, we're in the phase 1 of the environmental assessment. We had discretionary meetings to garner input. Discretionary meetings meaning there's no obligation for the county to have held meetings, going to councils, holding public meetings, but it was to garner information before we struck out with a firm problem statement.
Right.
So clearly, we have exceeded the requirements of the environmental assessment in the creation of the problem statement.
Good. I wanted to talk about Northern Bruce Peninsula, and they're currently doing an EA, I believe, on floodplains. I think you're kind of in the middle of that EA.
We're not the East District, we're going through an exercise for our zoning bylaw to determine the wetlands and the criteria used for wetlands.
I was just wondering if our EA shouldn't wait until after that study or consultation, or whatever you want to call it, is completed.
It's an interesting comment that we have considered in the department and liaise with our colleagues in the planning department. And then the question is the impact on the environmental statement of environmental assessment based on slight boundary changes of whether it be PSWs or ANSIs or zoning designations. And a lot of the outcome of that is how we manage sedimentation erosion control and how we have further regard for the boundaries. So if that study is undertaken in tandem or in conjunction with the environmental assessment, is we will continue to have regard for changes of boundaries if and when they would occur. But our people and myself aren't of the opinion that it's going to be dramatic in terms of a change of solution, possibly final design.
Okay.
Anything else, Janice?
I do.
Okay.
Are you okay with that? Does anybody else have anything you want to jump in, or I'll just, okay. Brian, do you have a chart that shows your plan on how to get to the construction phase, which would include the costing along the way?
No.
Do you have something like that?
My gosh,
that
I
this
have
council
gone-
could perhaps review?
I have gone down that road before. How can I possibly cost something I've got no knowledge of what it is? Again, we haven't got a problem statement, never mind options. But let's talk, many times I've heard people say, well, what's our time frame? What's our plan? Well, our plan is an environmental assessment by phase. Our objective, and I've mentioned this in a couple of other venues, is that we hold public meetings again in the spring, early summer of 2016, because it's very clear that there's a lot of interest by the cottager community. So we did an amazing amount of work to hold those meetings in late August to get their input on discretionary meetings so we could align ourselves so we'll have something available early spring or late spring, early summer 2016 when we're in phase 2 of the environmental assessment.
Right. Yeah, and I appreciate that you held it in August for the seasonal residents of both municipalities. So when you're talking about the cost, so we've budgeted $15.3 million for the project, and I'm just wondering if you've budgeted anything over and above that for hydrology issues that you're going to run into.
Can I distinguish between estimate and budget? I think budget's a better defined phrase that is provided to committee on an annual basis, whether it be annually or part of a capital forecast. Right now, we do not have a budget. We have a budget for the West Road in 2016 in the amount of about $256,000. We have a reserve for the West Road in the amount of about $1 million. But we do not have budget values for 2017, 18, and 19, naturally because they hinge on the outcome of the environmental assessment.
But you do estimate that the project's going to be somewhere around 15 million. I mean,
Not
those
anymore.
numbers have been, not anymore?
Not anymore.
And what's changed that?
I believe it's input of community, its potential solution. Again, the solutions may go from do nothing,
Right,
transfer,
right.
modest improvement, to major construction. Or just the traditional options.
Okay, Janice, I don't want to cut you off. I'm sure we can
I'm
go on all
actually
day. but-
finished. It's
Oh,
perfect timing.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Perfect timing, Mr.
Okay, well, I'm not cutting you off then.
No, you're not. You're officially
But I think
not.
that's enough of the West Road for today. We'll go on to item B on the wayfinding sign update. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The report identifies a group of 67 signs that we're going to get installed, I hope yet this year, but seeing the good weather, and that we've got more signs coming. I'm very pleased to indicate that we had a very good comment from the airport manager, I believe. Very pleased about the signs recently put out, directing people towards our important Saugeen Airport. That's all I had on that matter, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone wish any comment on the wayfinding signs? Okay, we'll move on. Item C, Bruce Road 25.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I always like to keep committee abreast of undertakings, environmental assessments. We've got one in Port Elgin at the south side as we look at problems, opportunities that address road alignment and drainage, and they're interlinked. We had a discretionary public meeting about a month ago. We had a lot of people out there. Yes, a lot of people. Mayor Mike had joined us and was part of a large group. I'd say hundreds. 150. There's a lot of people out. And yes, we now need to confirm the problem statement again and identify on the best course of action, because we've got some integrated issues, drainage and roads, and we'll keep the committee addressed. I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of this, it was on your radar, and you could comfort people to say that yes, you're aware that the county is working with Saugeen Shores on this matter.
Thank you. Anything else, Mike, or good to go? D, Lucknow Patrol Shop.
We had the grand opening just weeks ago. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Warden. I think the report goes through all the things that were done in a very brief presentation. And I think of importance was looking at our anticipated total project cost, which is on the second page of your report.
Yeah, it was 2 Fridays ago, I guess, what would that be? November 13th. That Friday there was a good attendance, not quite as large as I thought there'd be, but maybe we didn't get notice out or the invitations out quite as advertising. But I do want to thank you and your staff and Brent and everyone else that worked on it. I think you've created a very excellent facility there, especially for the over half the square footage is obviously for our sand and our salt safe. So I think we've got an excellent facility for our men and ladies to work safe and healthy for many, many years to come. So if you haven't seen it, cruise around in there and introduce yourself, and I'm sure the men will show you around. It's I think it's been a well thought out and excellent facility. So congratulations, Brian, on a job well done.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Winter Control Handbook.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As noted in the report, I'd threatened to go over 1 or 2, or actually 5 or 6 small items, and I'll do that, recognizing that you've got other meetings this afternoon. Again, our handbook has been emailed to each of you, I think, probably a week ago. It was emailed to the Public Works Supervisor about the same time, and it gets disseminated to OPP and police forces and a variety of different partners. Again, we address that we've got a bunch of information available for people to be aware of the conditions of the roads and what roads are or are not closed, and that's through our website and or our telephone number. I mentioned that we'd take a brief look at level of service. And in the county, our level of service is twofold. Generally, on lower volume roads, we've got a snow-packed condition, and on higher volume roads, we've got a center bare condition. So classes 2 and 3 for center bare, classes 4 for snowpack. And I offer this the plan that identifies the roads in your area and the classifications and subsequently the level of service. And so, Mr. Chairman, I thought that's all I would mention on that. If people ask questions of level of service, this is the document that we would refer to. Then we talked briefly about road closures and ceasing operations, two very distinct things. OPP close our roads, and we work very closely with OPP, and in my opinion, it's our relationship is working wonders in the sense that I'm hoping that the camera can't pick off those telephone numbers, because we have the telephone numbers of on-duty sergeants, so we get to the decision makers on the road. If there's a closure, patrolmen talk to decision makers at OPP, and then we go back and forth, signs up, road closed, identified on our internet, identified, but which goes up to radio stations, et cetera. So it's a system that has worked well, and actually I think it's going to be reviewed by the OGRA perhaps as a potential unique application in February. Then we've got the application of ceasing operations, which is internally how the department recognizes that the conditions are such that our people cannot be on the road. We distinguish that from road closures, which is driven by OPP. So I distinguish between ceasing operations and road closures. I think with that, Mr. Chairman, I had a number of other things like patrolling and cost of sand and cost of salt, but I would certainly entertain any questions. I think in terms of preamble, level of service, and the closing and ceasing operations were the more important of the elements to discuss in that very large book that I think is some 70 pages long. And I'd entertain questions.
Does anyone have any questions of Brian at this time? Mike?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just, Brian, a question on your level of service there after on each road, and you'll be center air after so long. On what criteria is there a standard, and I suspect this goes to liability, right? Is to trying to limit our liability. Is there a provincial, like a maintenance standards that we use, or is it?
Excellent point, actually. Thank you. Our level of service policy has two components. One is sort of a visible objective on the road for a ratepayer, which is center bear and snowpack. The other component of level of service is the minimum maintenance standards that says when we respond and how quickly we respond and what is a sufficient response. So we do two things. One is for the ratepayers acknowledge center bear or snowpack, and in the other is for defendability and liability, we use minimum maintenance standards for when we react to snow or slippery. So the policy itself is about 4 pages long. Half of it is minimum maintenance standards, embodying minimum maintenance standards in our level of service.
Does anyone have any other questions on the winter control? Because if so, if you'd like to stay after school. And other than you do a fantastic job, Brian, thank you for keeping our roads safe. And we're on to items F, which is the Roma OGRA conference.
This is just an acknowledgement, Mr. Chairman, that it's pending, and just so people are aware and are aware.
Okay. And tender summary.
I think the only one is the McCurdy Bridge, which is a bridge over the Saugeen River that we hope to tender in the spring. And this is just for the Ontario Land Surveyor Services to identify the existing alignment and properties upon which to apply the solutions.
Any questions on the tender summary sheet? Next meeting, December 17th, Brian, 2015. And if there's nothing further, motion to adjourn by Milton Mitch. We're adjourned. Thank you, Brian.
Super.